There are 4 things to never buy at a gun show, and today we're going to go over them because the best way to learn is from other people's mistakes. But if you just insist on buying any one of these items, I'll have some tips along the way so that you don't get ripped off. Number 1 is reloaded ammo or ammo of dubious origin. It often comes in a bulk package in these steel ammo boxes or even the plastic ammo boxes that you see, and we tend to talk ourselves into it even though we know we shouldn't be doing it. You never know who has loaded this ammo. Have they put an overcharged weight in here? Are the pressures dangerous? Have they sized the brass correctly? And will the ammo even fire? And we often talk ourselves into this when there's an ammo shortage or you just can't find that ammo that you want and you say, hey, I'm just going to go out and use it for plinking, so it really doesn't matter. However, it just takes that one occasion to ruin the whole experience like it did with this ammo that I purchased. And if you look at this ammo that I purchased, when I dig down to the bottom of it, you can see there's various types of bullets that are loaded in this ammo. Here I have an open tip match bullet, and here I have a full metal jacket bullet. And you can even see on the cases themselves that one bullet is loaded and we can see the cannelure pretty good. Another bullet is loaded and you can't see the cannelure. So these are loaded to various lengths in the casing as well. So you just never know what's going to happen. And in fact, when this ammo, which is in 308, and I bought it for my M1 to go take out to the range and plink, and I took my first shot and it didn't fire. So I pulled back on the charging handle here to try to eject the case, and the case was stuck. So I gave it a little bit more, tried again, and the case was stuck. And what I had to do was resort to this hammer that I always bring to the range and actually bang on my charging handle to get the bullet to eject. I figured it was just a one-off, and I chambered another round, went to pull the trigger again, fired, the same thing happened. Didn't fire, pulled back on the charging handle, and no deal. I couldn't open the action again. So again, I had to resort to the hammer and bang the action open to eject the case. And after that, I was actually done at the range. So I never even fired the lot of 308 that I purchased in this ammo can. And you have to ask yourself, is it really worth it to risk the firearm that you're using at the range to damage it or even to injure yourself when somebody hasn't loaded the ammo correctly? So the number 1 thing to never buy at a gun show is reloaded ammo or ammo of dubious origin. Number 2, anything that's not gun or Second Amendment related. Now, we've all been to gun shows recently, or maybe you haven't, but there's a lot of timeshares, windows, beef jerky, shoe insoles, things that are sold at a gun show that just have no relationship to what a gun show should be. And I know there's pressure from the promoters, as my cousin promotes a gun show once a year for a group, and there is pressure to sell the tables, to get the money coming in from the vendors. But I would have to say, don't purchase these items from those vendors. Don't give them a profit. Don't give them the ability or to come back to these gun shows over and over again. Don't make it worth their time and money. And if we were to not purchase these items at the gun show, eventually the gun shows would come back to something other than the flea market atmosphere that a lot of the gun shows have nowadays. Now, my cousin doesn't sell tables to non-2A related people at his gun show, and they have a very specific set of rules with regard to how that gun show is run and what can be displayed on the tables, and it makes it a great gun show experience. So in the short term, I'm not trying to hurt the promoters, but I'm trying to help them because in the long run, I think the gun show will come back. There will be more community interest to actually go to a gun show, and you will get more sales at the gun shows for the promoters, for the vendors that are actually selling 2A related and guns at these shows. The third thing you should never buy at a gun show is a used revolver or used semi-automatic pistol from somebody walking around the show. Now, I know there's plenty of you out there that have gotten a great deal on a used revolver or a used semi-automatic pistol, and if you have, put it in the comments down below that you bought it at a gun show. If you have got ripped off on one, also put that down in the comments, and then hear me out as to why you should never buy it from somebody walking around at the gun show. Because it's hard to check the function of a revolver or semi-automatic pistol at a gun show, that is one of the reasons why you should not buy a used gun at that gun show. And that's generally because most of the pistols are checked at the beginning of the gun show, and they are zip tied that will not allow you to perform the functions and the checks that you need to perform anyway on a revolver to ensure that it's working accurately. Now, I know there's a crowd of you that think that revolvers don't break. Well, they do. And when they do, it's a big deal. It usually involves trying to take off the side plate here or getting into the internals of the revolver. And that's generally a job for a gunsmith and not something you can do at home. In fact, this Smith & Wesson J-frame that I bought online was brand new. It arrived in its traditional Smith & Wesson blued box, and it promptly went back to the factory with this repair sheet that the factory then returned to me, because when I got it, the cylinder would not turn directly out of the factory. So if you know how to replace the sear and replace the sear spring, then by all means, you should be able to buy a revolver or a used revolver at a gun show. But most of us don't know how to do that. Again, the only tip that I would have is, if you really want to buy a revolver at a gun show, is bring some wire cutters along so that you can cut off the zip tie. Now, it's generally not very good etiquette at the gun show to be dry firing a weapon at the gun show. We've all heard of, and maybe some of you have witnessed negligent discharges at the gun show. So you can always ask the person walking around if you can take the revolver, with him outside, cut that off, and do a function check of your gun, to check to make sure that there's no hammer release here or set off that would indicate that somebody's monkeyed with the sear. And you can also then check the timing of the gun and the lockup of the gun to ensure that you are getting a quality used firearm. And then I'd also say bring an extra zip tie so that the guy, you can zip tie it back up for that person and they can go back into the gun show. Now, with regard to a semi-automatic pistol at a gun show, there's just no way I would buy one from somebody walking around. Generally, when you walk up to somebody and ask them what they got in the box, and they say it's this semi-automatic Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0, and you ask them if it's new, they'll tell you, well, it's used, but I only put a box of ammo through it. I mean, how many times have we heard they've only put a box of ammo through it? They say that to make it sound like it's not very used or worn out. But in general, what I have found out from gun shows is that means the pistol jams for some reason. And again, once you get a pistol, a semi-auto that jams, and it jams fairly often, you lose confidence in the firearm and you can't trust it. So these often go back to the factories, and for whatever reason, the semi-autos that I have had that have jammed, even straight from the factory could never get them to run any good or to my satisfaction. So I would never buy a semi-automatic pistol at a gun show from somebody walking around. Again, we often get sucked into the price that these are less costly than a new firearm, but in reality, the people walking around often want ridiculous amounts of money for a used firearm compared to what they're worth, and you generally don't get that much of a deal compared to just going out and getting a new firearm like this Smith & Wesson, which also comes with a warranty, a lifetime warranty for the original purchaser. Now, I've had two Smith & Wessons I've had to send back to the factory brand new, and they never questioned whether I was the original owner, but I don't know what other manufacturers would do with regard to warranty repairs and whether they would require proof that you were the original owner or even if they have lifetime warranties. So don't get stuck with something that you wish you had not purchased, and just avoid purchasing these firearms at a gun show. Now, I put this fourth item on the list, and it's going to be a little controversial because you can get very good deals at gun shows on this fourth item if you really know what you're looking for. And you may not get a good deal at a gun show if you don't know what you're looking for, and that kind of applies to life in general. But again, we often get wrapped up into wishing something was more than what it was, and I don't want you to have that experience. So there are some never rules with this, and there are some exceptions to this fourth item, which are collectible firearms. Now, some of the never rules are like if you've bought a Colt nickeled gun, it should always come with a letter. You can get a letter from Colt from the factory, and they will, from the Colt archives that is, and they will tell you whether it left the factory in a nickeled configuration. Because it's well known within the collector community that guns are what some people call enhanced. I would call them refinished and ruined, but that does happen, and you can get ripped off that way. So there are plenty of nickeled Colt firearms around that originally left the factory in a blued condition and are now nickeled. You can simply get that confirmed by the factory with a letter that would accompany the gun when it's sold. And when you enhance or ruin a blued gun by refinishing it with nickel, it's oftentimes, if it's well done, difficult to discern whether that was done at the factory or afterward. With blued guns, there can also be several tricks that people do to enhance the appearance. Oftentimes near the edge of the muzzle on a firearm, like a semi-automatic pistol, that you'll have muzzle wear. And people will take cold blue and they will touch it up, or they may touch up other areas of the firearm to touch up the bluing to make the bluing look better. So if you don't know what you're looking for in the bluing, and you are suspicious that part of the gun has been touched up and you're just not sure, I always bring some Flitz metal polish to the gun show. And what I can do is I can ask the person, I can say, was the gun reblued? Has it been touched up with cold blue? If they say no, you point to the area where you're suspicious on the gun and say, would you mind if I just put a little Flitz on there and with a rag and polished it and see if the cold bluing comes off? Because one thing that it will do, Flitz will do, is it will remove cold bluing from a blued firearm, and it will not damage the factory finish from that firearm. So if we place some Flitz on a rag like this, and we simply apply some of the Flitz to the slide here of the firearm where we're suspicious, and then let it soak in for a minute. We can then wipe the Flitz off, and no matter how hard we scrub on this slide, the bluing will not come off, but if it's been retouched by some type of cold blue, it will come off. Now, I purchased this collectible at an auction, and it was one of these auctions that came with another gun that I was actually interested in, so I wasn't interested in this. And so I never looked at it until I got home. And then when I got home and actually took a look at it, I saw the back here, actually looked suspicious. So I took some flits, and you can see right here how the cold blue came off and revealed a replacement part, which this part right here should be the same as the bluing on this factory part here of the lower frame. And I was easily able to take off the cold bluing to see what it looked like. So if you are interested in getting a blued collectible firearm at a gun show, it can be a great place to get good deals if you know what you're looking for. Now, a collector's probably not going to let you flitz the whole gun and polish it and to see if there's any cold bluing on there. So remember that the time to do your research about a gun or a collectible is not at the gun show, but beforehand. Know what you're looking for when you go to the gun show so that you can get a good deal. And if you'd like to know the 5 secrets of a gun show, I've made a video here based on those 5 secrets, and those are based on my cousin promoting a gun show, me helping him to promote the gun show, and me sitting behind the vendor tables and being there for the dealer setup.